Hey guys, tonight we're stepping quietly into a world that feels more like a fever dream than a history book. You're not a king, not a general, not even a merchant. You're a nobody, a laborer, a servant, a slave in ancient Egypt, waking up before the sun, with sore feet, stiff shoulders, and the Nile murmuring somewhere nearby. The sky is still navy blue, your back already hurts, and the day hasn't even started. You probably won't survive this. But hey, let's see what you can do. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you feel is the straw mat beneath you. It smells like dust and old sweat. You slept in your work tunic. Again, it's rough linen, stiff in the shoulders, and not very clean. Someone nearby is already up and moving. You can hear them pouring water into a clay basin, the dull thunk of ceramic against ceramic. You roll onto your side and pull your knees up for one last moment of warmth before the desert air wakes all the way up. Your home is a tiny mud brick hut tucked into the workers' village just west of the main road. No glass in the window, just a rectangular hole. Your breath clouds a little in the early morning chill. Later, it'll be hot enough to fry locusts on the walls, but for now, there's a breeze threading through the door. You sit up, rub your neck, and glance around. The family next door is already bickering. Someone lost their tool again. Someone else is asking about the bread rations. The same things are said every day, in more or less the same way, like a loop the whole village has been stuck in since you were a kid. Except you're not a kid anymore, and your knees know it. You're not sure if you're technically a slave. That word's a bit fuzzy in this place. Some workers are state-owned. Others are just too poor to leave. You were born here, into this dust and routine. Some say if you work long enough, quietly enough, you might get granted a patch of land when you're older. Historians still argue whether the line between free and enslaved was always so clear in Egypt, especially for workers attached to royal projects. But it doesn't matter much. You still have to show up every day, or someone comes looking for you, and not with flowers. Someone whistles out front. Time to get up. The overseer's assistant is making his rounds. You splash cold water on your face and rinse your hands in the basin outside. A neighbor's goat eyes you suspiciously from its tether. Chickens cluck around your ankles, unimpressed with your existence. The sun is just barely peeking over the eastern ridge, and the palm trees cast long shadows across the sandy path. You grab your worn sandals, more patch than leather at this point, and loop the thin cords around your feet. Your satchel is slung over your shoulder, empty except for a chipped wooden spoon and a lump of yesterday's barley bread. No use bringing a full ration, it's better to eat at the break, when your arms are too tired to lift anything else. Someone says the inspector is in town today, doing counts. You sigh and adjust your satchel. That means standing in formation, pretending not to itch, and nodding at people who outrank you without ever looking them in the eye. The air is warming up already. You can hear the low hiss of the Nile in the distance, reeds brushing one another like whispered complaints. You pass a woman carrying a clay jug balanced on her shoulder, her child tied to her back with strips of cloth. The child stares at you like you're the most boring creature alive. You might be. You meet up with the others near the main path. About 30 of you men and women, young and old, some yawning, some already gossiping. You nod to a friend, Seinmut, who gives you a look that says, "Just another day we won't remember." And he's probably right. The foreman appears, his tunic much cleaner than yours. He's got that whip again, not for use. Not really, but just hanging there. As a suggestion, you try not to stare at it. He reads off a list. Names, assignments, quarry duty, irrigation trench, cart pulling, grain grinding. Your name comes up. North path, brick hauling. Your back winces at the words. You head toward the worksite in small groups, dust swirling around your ankles. Your friend Nefredi rolls her eyes. North path again, she says. They're trying to kill you quietly, you shrug. If they wanted me dead, they'd just send me to the copper mines. Fair, she says. At least the bricks don't bite. You trudge past a group of younger boys sharpening copper chisels with flint stones. One of them waves. You half wave back. He still thinks this work might be temporary. Like someone's going to discover his talent and rescue him from obscurity. You don't have the heart to tell him otherwise. The path to the site is longer than you remembered, or maybe your feet are slower than they were last week. One man starts singing an old work chant, soft and low, and a few others pick it up. It doesn't help your mood, but it keeps the rhythm. And sometimes rhythm is all you've got. As you walk, the sun lifts fully into the sky. Shadows disappear. The breeze vanishes. The day begins. In earnest. And you're not even sweating yet. You reach the site. A wide clearing filled with carts, bricks, mud, and frustration. The foreman's assistant marks your arrival on a tally sheet. You nod. Place your satchel under a rock for safekeeping, and get to work. First brick, then another, then another. Your hands already know what to do. But your mind? Your mind drifts, searching for shade, or a memory, or a dream you haven't let yourself have in a while. Maybe about a different life. One with fewer lists, fewer bricks. You adjust your grip. Dust blows into your face. Someone sneezes behind you. And just like that, your day has begun. You're halfway through your first stack of bricks when the overseer calls your name again. He doesn't shout exactly. It's more like a barca-clipped syllable that carries across the heat like a slap in the face. You flinch a little, though you pretend you didn't. Everyone hears it. Heads turn. One guy mouths, "Uh-oh." Like this is the most exciting thing that's happened all week. You straighten your back, wipe your hands on your tunic, and walk toward him. Your legs are already aching from yesterday, but you make the effort to walk briskly. Dragging your feet would only get you noticed again, and not in a way that ends with a fruit basket. He doesn't say much when you reach him, just points to a pile of cracked bricks and gestures toward the riverbank. Take them. Dump them. Then cart in a fresh batch. And hurry. We're behind. Oh. You don't argue. Arguing with overseers is a good way to end up assigned to latrine detail, which involves more than you want to imagine. You load up the broken bricks into a sled, a curved wooden platform that slides across the sand with effort and noisy, and begin the slow haul toward the river. It's not glamorous work, but nothing here is. You pass a woman weaving flax fibers into ropes, her fingers nimble and distracted. She doesn't look up. Why would she? As you walk, you overhear a few lines of conversation. Two older men near a cart are whispering about a missing worker. Ran off last week, one mutters. North path. Just vanished. Won't get far, the other replies. They always find him, out in the dunes, skin like parchment. You glance over, but neither of them meets your eye. It's just another reminder. Run. And you die thirsty. Stay. And you die slowly. But maybe not today. You reach the riverbank, unload the broken bricks into a waste pit, and take a minute. Just a minute to breathe. The Nile ripples quietly nearby, dark blue and full of secrets. It smells like mud and life. Papyrus reeds sway in the current. Somewhere downstream, A heron takes off with a bored flap of wings. You squat in the shade of a leaning acacia tree and let your mind wander. There's not much time for it soon. You'll be expected back with more bricks, but these little pauses are how you survive. You take them when you can. You learn to listen to the landscape, to feel where the sun is without looking up, to spot when an overseer's shadow is getting too close. Nearby, a boy not more than 12 is washing the tools in a shallow basin. He sees you resting and gives you a quick nod. Not judging, just acknowledging. You're part of the same cycle, the same wheel. Maybe one day he'll be like you, and maybe not. Hard to say. Historians still argue whether young laborers like him were technically apprentices or just smaller versions of slaves. The lines blur. You haul yourself up and begin the walk back toward the site, this time pulling an empty sled, which somehow feels heavier than the full one. It's the anticipation. You know what's waiting. Another pile of bricks, another batch of mud, another reminder that no one here is irreplaceable. At the loading station, another foreman greets you with a barely interested grunt. Took you long enough. You don't respond. You just lower the sled, wait while two others load it, and then begin the trip back to the site. On the way, you pass a tall, lean man with a cloth tied around his head. He walks like his joints are made of wood. Someone whispers that he used to be a chariot driver until he got thrown and broke something important. Now, he hauls stone. Life has a way of punishing optimism around here. When you return to your post, the bricks are heavier than you remember. Or maybe your arms are weaker today. You fall back into the rhythm lift. Carry, stack, repeat. The sun climbs higher. The flies multiply. You sweat through your tunic, and the fabric sticks to your back like second skin. At some point, someone slips you a date. The fruit, not the calendar kind. It's soft, sweet, a little fermented. You nod your thanks. Small mercies. In the late morning, the work slows for a moment. A cart breaks an axle. Everyone takes the opportunity to catch their breath. You sit down on a stone and stretch your legs, watching a lizard dart across the sand. That's when you hear the low drone of the overseer's conch horn. It means the records clerk is doing a head count. You groan inwardly. This means standing in line again. You hate standing in line. Not because it's hard, but because it's boring. And you always get stuck behind the guy who smells like fermented onions. Still, you line up. You let the sun roast your shoulders. The clerk, a bored-looking man with an ink-stained tunic, mutters names and checks his scroll. Occasionally, he pauses to make a sarcastic comment, mostly to amuse himself. "Ah, still alive, are we?" he says to a man who's clearly missing part of a toe. When your name comes up, you raise your hand. The clerk doesn't look up, just nods, scratches something, and waves you on. You return to the work zone, where someone has started stacking bricks in a kind of pyramid. You almost laugh. The mini pyramid won't last long. It's just someone being cheeky. That's how you cope here. Brick pyramids, bad jokes, daydreams of mangoes you've never tasted. Later, as the sun hits its apex, someone drops their tool. Not just drops it, clatters loudly, and hits a fellow worker in the shin. There's shouting, a brief scuffle, and a sharp warning from the foreman. And just like that, the mood shifts. Everyone's quieter now. You move more carefully. The tension lingers like heat in the air. You remind yourself not to get too comfortable. Even the smallest moment of clumsiness can draw attention, and attention rarely ends well for someone like you. Still, you keep going, because that's the rule here. Keep moving, keep lifting, Keep your head down. And, if possible, make it to sunset without giving anyone a reason to remember your name. By now, the sun is fully overhead, and everything around you seems to buzz with heat. Even the air feels tired, thick with sand, and the dull hum of flies. Your mouth is dry. Your hands are crusted with a mix of brick dust and old sweat. And your stomach has started to murmur. Not a growl more, like a slow, pitiful complaint. You glance over at the pile of bricks still left to move, and it occurs to you that the pile is both endless and completely unimpressed with your suffering. But then finally it's break time. The foreman, standing on a raised plank of sun-bleached wood, raises a hand like he's parting the Red Sea. Not that you'd know that story. That's someone else's scroll. You slump down into the shade of a half-crumbled wall, next to a group of other workers who have already started unwrapping their bundles. You hear someone mutter, "Thank the gods." But it's said so often it's basically meaningless, now just noise between the brick halls and the backaches. You reach into your satchel and pull out your ration, one lump of barley bread, hard as a roof tile, and a small clay cup filled with, well, something they still call beer, technically. It's sour, cloudy, and flat, but it's cold. And right now, that's enough. You chew slowly. The bread is gritty with sandier, not sure if that's from the baking or just the general ambiance of Egypt. Everything here tastes faintly of dust, including your dreams. A boy next to you tries to bargain for a second cup of beer with an extra strip of dried fish. You don't have any fish, so you just listen. The negotiations are tense but oddly polite, like two bureaucrats trapped in child-sized bodies. Eventually, he gets his second drink, and you get a laugh out of it. Small victories. One of the women across from you is talking about a recent dream she had. There was a boat made of gold, she says, and it floated over the fields. The grain bent underneath it, and it didn't sink. A good omen, someone else snorts. Or maybe your stomach was just empty. You finish your bread and lean back against the wall, feeling it warm through your tunic. You shut your eyes for a second, not to nap, just to soften the edges of the day. There's still work to do, and getting too relaxed would be dangerous. But a few deep breaths, some shade, and a slightly fermented beverage, that's survival. That's luxury, in its own pathetic way. Someone next to you starts humming an old work song, low, rhythmic, almost melodic. You recognize it. Your mother used to hum the same tune while grinding flour, back before the village got swallowed up by temple expansion and half the homes got reassigned. That song's older than the bricks you're hauling, probably. Historians still argue whether these chants were standardized or improvised on the fly. Either way, they pass the time, which is the most valuable currency around here. The song fades, and so does the break. The foreman's voice cuts across the courtyard again, and everyone starts shifting. You grow, not dramatically, just enough to remind your body that yes, you still exist. And yes, that means standing up. You brush crumbs from your lap and return your cup to the communal jug. It's nearly empty already. Someone's trying to get the last drop out with a piece of reed, which feels both resourceful and kind of sad. Back to work. This time, you're stacking the new bricks into a loading cart. It's easier on your back, but harder on your shoulders. The cart's wheels squeak like a frightened bird every time it's moved. You find a rhythm. Bend, lift, place. Bend, lift, place. Occasionally you pause to wipe your forehead, but mostly, it's just motion. Endless motion. You pass the time by counting, not aloud, just in your head. 10 bricks, then 10 more. You imagine yourself somewhere else for each set. First 10. You're beside the Nile, fishing with your uncle. Next 10. You're napping in a field. Then you're in the market, watching a juggler toss knives. You never got to see the end of that performance. Someone stole a melon, and the crowd scattered. Another worker nearby is whispering to himself. Not praying rehearsing. He's trying to remember a list. Names of gods, or family, or maybe both. He's got a nervous energy about him. You've seen it before. People rehearsing for their judgment day even though they're still alive. Because here, in Egypt, you're judged twice. Once by your overseers, and once by the gods. And only one of those judgments happens in this lifetime. He notices you watching and stops mid-mutter. Just in case, he says with a shrug. You nod. Better be ready. You pause for a sip of water. It's lukewarm now, but you ration it anyway. Hydration's not a joke here. You've seen too many people pass out mid-haul, only to be dragged into the shade like broken tools. And while they sometimes recover, they don't always get their spot back. Slower means replaceable, and being replaceable here is just one step away from being forgotten. You finish the cart. The overseer nods, not praise, not even acknowledgement really. Just a flick of his hand, like he's swatting a fly. But hey, it's not a punishment. That's basically a compliment. You hear a distant cry someone's been stung by something. Maybe a scorpion, maybe just a wasp. Either way, the noise gets a reaction. A few workers pause, glance, then go back to stacking. No one wants to be the one caught rubbernecking. You think about your own injuries over the years. A split lip, a twisted ankle. That time you dropped a brick on your toe and the nail turned black. You let it fall off quietly one night by the fire, wrapped it in old linen, and said nothing. Because saying something would have meant rest. And rest leads to suspicion. You make it through the afternoon without mishap, which is honestly a win. The sun starts to tilt westward, and the shadows stretch again. There's still more to do, but the air has shifted. People work faster when they know the end is near. Not because they're excited, just because there's a kind of mercy in routine. If you finish this, you get to walk back to your hut. You get your water, maybe another bite of food, maybe even a joke before bed. You steal another glance at the river. The Nile keeps flowing, same as ever. You wonder how many other hands have done what yours are doing now. How many backs have bent? How many names have vanished from scrolls and tombs? Probably all of them, but you're still here. Still standing. Still lifting. And that's enough for today. The march to the worksite is something you never quite get used to. It's not that it's long, though it feels longer every time. It's not that it's painful, though your feet have blisters upon blisters. It's the sameness. The daily procession of sore-limbed bodies trudging down the same rutted path, past the same scrubby trees and cracked stones, toward the same demands and dust. Even your shadow looks bored. Still, you go. You always go. The cart track is busy this morning more than usual. A few oxen are being guided clumsily past you, their drivers shouting and snapping whips at the air more than the animals. You step to the side just in time to avoid a slop of half-dried mud flung from one of the carts. It hits a tree with a lazy thwack, which feels symbolic somehow. Your satchel thumps against your side as you walk. You've tied a strip of cloth around your forehead today to keep the sweat from dripping into your eyes. It's already failing. The others around you are mostly quiet. Not from discipline, just from exhaustion. The early hours are the worst before the body remembers how to endure. Someone sneezes. Someone coughs. Someone mutters something about divine punishment. You're not sure if they mean the weather, the foreman, or the entire system of creation. You pass the same bent fig tree you pass every morning. It leans out over the path, like it's trying to escape. You understand that feeling deeply. Every once in a while, someone leaves a little token in its roots, a bead, a feather, a folded reeds, if the tree might grant favors. You've never tried it yourself. You're not superstitious, just tired. Ahead, you see the rise of the quarry pit. Today, that's your site. You've worked here before. It's all jagged limestone ledges and two bright walls that reflect the sunlight straight into your eyes. The sound is worse than the heat, the constant clink of chisels, the occasional shout of warning, and the low rumble of pulled carts echoing against stone. It's like walking into a giant bronze bell that someone keeps tapping with a stick. You line up with the others at the tool shed, if you can call it that. It's just a shaded alcove stacked with baskets of copper chisels, worn mallets, and crude wooden levers. The clerk, an old man with a permanent squint, hands you a chisel that's seen better centuries. "Don't break it," he says, handing it over like it's royal jewelry. "I'll try," you mutter, already calculating how many swings it'll take before your arm starts to cramp. You head to your assigned ledge. It's narrow, high, and awkward to reach. You climb the stone steps carved into the rock with the same care you use every time, one hand on the wall, one on your tool, and a prayer whispered only once your foot is firmly down. You're not afraid of heights, but you are afraid of slipping, not for the pain, but for the paperwork. You settle into position and begin. Chip, chip, chip. At first, the sound is unbearable. Then it becomes your whole world. You develop a rhythm. 3 chips, then a pause, then 3 more. Every few minutes you shake out your arm. If you go too fast, you'll tire early. If you go too slow, someone will notice. You aim for the middle, the sacred, forgettable middle. The place where survival lives. About half an hour in, your neighbor, a stout man with a nose like a hook, lets out a string of curses after his chisel slips. His knuckles are bleeding. Nothing serious, but he has to stop to wrap them. You offer him a piece of cloth from your sash. "Don't get soft," he grunts, but takes it anyway. "Too late," you say. "I've been soft since the flood season." He chuckles, and just like that, the mood softens. A little later, you take a sip of water from the communal jug. It's lukewarm and tastes vaguely of clay, but it's enough to rinse the grit from your throat. You sit for a minute on a smooth patch of stone, watching the sun creep across the ledges below. The workers look like ants, bent, busy, anonymous. You wonder again if the pharaoh knows your name. Probably not. Historians still argue whether royal records included the names of the common laborers who built their monuments. Some names survive on bits of pottery and graffiti, but most of you remain, quite literally, etched into the background. You return to the rhythm. Chip, chip, chip. You're working with limestone today. Softer than granite, but still unforgiving. You angle the chisel just so. The way your father taught you. He wasn't a master builder, just another worker, but he had hands that understood stone. "Talk to it," he used to say. "Listen for the crack before it comes." He was half poet, half exhausted. You miss him more in moments like this than you do at festivals. Somewhere nearby, a child calls out, probably one of the water carriers. You look down and see a girl carrying a jug that's clearly too heavy for her. She's staggering, but still moving. You offer a wave. She doesn't wave back, but she notices. That's enough. You break for midday again, this time in the partial shade of a scaffold that's been half built for weeks. The bricks arrived, but no one knows who they're for. That kind of confusion is normal. Egypt's building projects are vast, chaotic, and sometimes completely directionless, like a game of telephone that spans centuries. You share your second lump of bread with your neighbor. In return, he gives you a strip of dried onion. It burns your mouth in a way that reminds you you're still alive. You rest your head against the stone and close your eyes for a minute. The heat presses against your skin like a heavy blanket. The air smells of crushed dust and something faintly metallic like copper and old sweat. You remember a story someone told last week about a runaway who made it all the way to the delta before being caught. Supposedly, he disguised himself as a fisherman, shaved his head, and spoke with a different accent. Didn't help. The officials knew what to look for. Calluses, mostly. You can't fake soft hands. You open your eyes. Your break is over. Back to the ledge. Back to the stone. You pick up your chisel and mallet and settle into the rhythm once more. Chip, chip, chip. That sound follows you into the afternoon. And for now, it means you're still here. You lose track of time after a while. Not in the poetic, dreamy way, more like your brain just gives up on keeping score. The sun's still overhead. The tools still ring against stone, and your arms feel like sacks of wet sand. You can't remember if it's been 2 hours or 6. Maybe both. Time is elastic when you're this tired. It stretches and snaps, then loops back on itself like an old rope. The bricks don't care. You're stacking them again now, this time into rows for drying. Wet mud pressed into wooden molds, patted smooth by hand, and left under the full burn of the sun until they're solid enough to carry. It's not hard labor compared to quarrying, but it's tedious. You press, lift, stack, repeat. And repeat. And repeat. You're not alone, of course. Around you, other workers do the same. Everyone's focused. Everyone's conserving their voice. Talking uses energy. Energy gets spent too quickly out here. A few people hum, low and wordless, like they're trying to keep their spirits from leaking out through their ears. You join them, just barely, adding your breath to the invisible thread holding you all upright. Your mind wanders. Always does. You think about a different life, maybe one where you're a boatman instead. Ferries across the Nile. Shady hat. Smooth river water. Just you and the current. You've heard those guys get to nap between trips. You could be that guy. Maybe. In another version of the world. Back in this version, a cart overturns. The crash snaps everyone to attention. A sharp clang of wood and clay. Someone yells. Someone swears. The overseer storms over, face like thunderclouds. You keep your eyes down. Always down. Turns out it was just a wheel that cracked. No one's hurt. Nothing expensive broken. Still, the supervisor makes a show of shouting at the poor fool who was guiding the cart. He's young, panicked. You feel for him. You've been him. Eventually, the shouting dies down. The cart is righted. Work resumes. A few minutes later, you're given a new task. Smoothing plaster onto the side of a half-finished wall. It's for a storage shed. You're not entirely sure what it's storing. Probably grain. Or disappointment. The plaster is cool and sticky in your hands. You spread it with a flat wooden blade, gently, evenly. There's a rhythm to it, too. Almost soothing, if you ignore the fact that the air feels like soup and your tunic is glued to your spine. A fellow worker nearby starts telling a story. You don't catch all of it. Just the good parts. Something about a priest who got locked inside a temple vault and spent 2 days living off oil lamps and old dates. Probably not true. But it gets a few laughs. That's what stories are for. You ask for the Timino to anyone in particular, and someone answers with a shrug. Closer to dusk than dawn, they say. That's good enough. You keep smoothing. Later, a priest passes through the site. Not your kind of priest, this one's official. Tall, shaved head, linen robes so white they hurt your eyes. He walks with his hands behind his back, inspecting, pausing, occasionally nodding. You've seen him before. He doesn't speak to you. He speaks to the overseers, and sometimes the foremen, and sometimes to the gods, but never to workers. You're not real to him. Still, you straighten your back a little as he walks by. Just in case. He murmurs something about divine alignment, then keeps moving. One of the supervisors nods furiously, as if trying to summon favor through neck motion alone. After he leaves, the atmosphere shifts again. Everyone relaxes by about 10%. You get a chance to refill your water. You kneel by the clay jar and scoop it carefully into your cup. Your hands are trembling a little. Not much. Just enough to remind you that you haven't stopped moving since sunrise. You sip slowly. The water is warm now, almost hot, but it's clean. You let it roll around your mouth before swallowing. A tiny, fleeting pleasure. As you finish, a younger worker named Dedu drops down beside you with a grunt. "Saw a vulture earlier," he says. "Circling low. Looking for you probably." You reply. "Maybe," he says. "I'm not that fast anymore." He scratches his head. "Hey, you ever wonder what happens if you just don't show up one day?" You raise an eyebrow. "No, I mean," he continues, "what if you just wandered into the marshes and never came back? Started fresh. New name. New village. Pretend to be a fisherman." You snort. "You don't know how to fish." "I could learn," he says. "Fish don't care if I'm a brick hauler." You both laugh quiet, worn-out laughs. It's the kind of joke that tastes like sadness around the edges. Historians still argue whether people in your position had any real social mobility. Some say yes, with time and favor. Others say it was all myth, offered like bread crusts to keep people obedient. You don't know which version is true. Maybe both. Maybe neither. You finish your drink and stand. Back to work. This time it's hauling the now dried bricks to the edge of the site. You lift 2 at a time, straining your arms, walking carefully across uneven ground. You try not to look at your feet too much. If you watch every step, you'll start imagining falling, and then you might. So you just keep going. Lift, step, step, drop, lift, step, step, drop. The sun begins to sink, finally. Dipping toward the western edge of the sky like it, too, is tired of watching you work. The shadows stretch. The air cools slightly, not enough to call it relief, but enough to notice. Your last trip takes longer. Your arms are shaking. Your sandals are worn nearly through, but you do it. You finish. You make it through the day. At the final whistle, more a horn than a whistle, really everyone starts to file out. Slow, stiff, quiet. You pick up your satchel, sling it over your shoulder, and start the walk back to the village. The path is the same, but the lighting is gentler now. Golden. You pass the bent fig tree again. Someone's left a fresh offering, a carved beetle, maybe made from limestone. You nod to it as you pass. Just in case. The walk is still long, still dusty. But it's different on the way home. You're not walking toward labor. You're walking toward rest. And for now, that's enough. The sun is just low enough now that the sky has shifted from gold to that soft, dusty pink you only get along the Nile. The kind of light that makes everything look slightly less broken. The path back to the village is full of slow-moving silhouettes, bent figures, dragging carts, children darting between ankles. It's like the world exhales all at once. You drag your feet a little more openly now. There's no overseer watching, no tall shadow looming with a tally scroll. Just the last warm breeze of the day brushing past your face and the sound of sandals scraping dirt, a quiet procession of the barely remembered. Your friend Sainmut walks beside you again. He doesn't talk much in the evenings, just walks. You're okay with that. You've had enough words shouted at you today anyway. When you reach the village boundaria, simple row of stones and a few sun-baked reed fences, you feel that subtle mental shift. You're not free, exactly. But you're in a space where no one is currently yelling. Which, for you, is the modern definition of freedom. Your hut is still standing, always a good sign. You push open the cloth hanging in the doorway and step inside. It smells like hot clay, dried herbs, and worn-out linen. You remove your sandals and stretch your toes, which respond with a series of tiny objections. You drop your satchel near the wall and sit on the mat you slept on last night. Somehow it feels like both 10 minutes and 10 years ago. You hear laughter outside, young, light, unburdened. Probably the neighbor's kids playing with that little bone dice game they made out of goat knuckles. You remember that game. You used to be good at it, back when you still had energy after sunset. You lean your head back against the wall, breathing slowly. Then a voice calls from outside. "Hey, you coming to the fire? Or what?" It's Nefredi. Her tone is light but unmistakably firm, like if you say no, she'll just come drag you there anyway. You groan dramatically and push yourself up. "Do I have a choice?" "Absolutely not," she calls back. You grab a dried fig from a bowl on the floor and munch on it as you head out. It's chewy, sweet, and surprisingly satisfying, one of the few luxuries anyone bothered to trade for this week. The central fire is already crackling in the village square. It's not a large fire, just enough to warm hands and toast whatever root vegetable someone found behind a storage bin, but it draws people in like moths, or bored laborers desperate for distraction. You settle onto the packed earth near Sainmut and Nefredi. She passes you a palm frond basket with 3 roasted onions and a hunk of roasted squash. You raise an eyebrow. "Raw smiles on those who flirt with temple cooks," she says, grinning. You take a bite and nod in appreciation. The squash is soft, smoky, and exactly what you didn't know you were craving. You all eat in companionable silence for a while. Around the fire, small groups talk softly. Someone's singing a half-remembered harvest song. Someone else is carving a tiny amulet from a dried seed pod. A man with a bad cough wraps himself in an old woven blanket and just stares at the flames. Then the rumors start. They always do at night. "Did you hear?" someone says. "They're building another temple south of the river. Big project. Could mean more hands needed. Or fewer," someone replies. "New overseer down there, real numbers guy, likes cutting corners." Someone said a worker at the stone yard got promoted. Actual pay and everything. Someone said a runaway made it to the sea. Someone said the gods are angry. Someone always says the gods are angry. You poke at a twig with your foot, letting the voices blur into background noise. And then Nefredi leans closer, lowers her voice. "Remember that old priest who came by the site last week?" You nod. "He dropped a scroll," she whispers. "A short one. Just a prayer, I think. But I picked it up, and he let me keep it." You blink. "You can read?" "Not really," she says. "But the boy next to the brewer? His cousin used to clean up after a temple scribe. Learned some symbols. He's teaching me." You stare at her. You weren't expecting that. She shrugs. "It's just, I don't know. Maybe one day I'll use it. Maybe not. But it's something." You nod again. You get it. Having something, even if it's barely more than an idea, can make a day like this survivable. The fire pops loudly. Someone throws on more reeds, and the smoke dances upward like a ghost, stretching after a long nap. A few more workers shuffle in, some cradling clay cups, others just looking for company. The space fills with warmth and quiet movement. You feel your body softening, unclenching. Then someone starts telling a joke. It's long and rambling, the kind that only lands because the speaker commits to it so fully. Something about a crocodile pretending to be a tax collector. The punchline makes no sense, but it earns enough groans and snorts that it doesn't matter. Laughter lives here, even if it's secondhand and slightly confused. You lay back, watching the stars wink into view. The sky here is massive, like it might swallow you if you blink too slowly. You recognize a few constellations. The crooked lion. The fish that chases the moon. The one that's supposed to be a boat but looks more like a bent stick. You close your eyes for a moment. You don't sleep. Not yet. But you rest. You let your bones go still. Eventually, you rise, stretch, and return to your hut. The fire is still going, the chatter still low. But your body is calling for that mat. Inside, you splash your face with water again. Not for cleanliness, just to cool your skin before sleep. You lie down, pull the cloth over your shoulders, and exhale. In the dark, you hear the usual night sounds. Distant dogs, wind nudging the reed fences, someone coughing 3 huts down. The same sounds every night, comforting in their own way. And before your thoughts drift too far, you remember that tomorrow will come just like today did. But for now, your eyes are heavy, your limbs are still. You've survived another day. You don't sleep deeply. You never really do. Not with that many aches tucked under your ribs. Not with that old bruise on your shoulder that still complains every time you turn over. And definitely not with the occasional donkey braying like it's auditioning for temple choir. Still, you rest. You drift in and out of shallow dream images of floating bricks, of rivers that run backward, of pyramids made entirely of fish. Your brain does strange things in the night. Maybe it's a survival tactic. Maybe it's just the leftover barley beer. When you wake, the sky outside your window hole is pale lavender. Dawn again. Already. You sit up with a groan. Not the theatrical kind, just a natural sound that your body makes now, like creaking door hinges or weary rope. You rub your neck. It doesn't help. You stretch your arms over your head. That helps a little more. Then, from somewhere down the main path, comes the voice of the overseer's assistant. He calls names. Yours is one of them. You don't panic. This isn't the bad kind of summons. This is the routine kind. Still annoying, but unlikely to lead to beatings or public scolding. Just another part of surviving. You rinse your face, slip into your work tunic, and head out. The air is crisp, but already warming. Somewhere nearby, a woman's grinding grain. The stone makes that familiar scritch-scritch noise. You could recognize it in your sleep. Probably do. Today, you're sent to the granary. That's not bad. Not easy, but it's one of the safer duties. Less sun, less falling rocks, more dust. Yes, but fewer accidents. You walk with the others, assigned to the task, about 10 of you. The granary sits near the temple complex, surrounded by high walls and guarded by stern-looking officials who, ironically, probably couldn't lift a sack of grain if their lives depended on it. You pass one of them at the gate. He nods, vaguely acknowledging your presence. That's rare enough to feel suspicious. Inside, it smells like old wheat and older sweat. Rows of massive clay silos dominate the courtyard. Your job today is straightforward. Measure, weigh, log. Well, not you. Exactly. You carry the grain. Someone else logs it. You're not one of the literate ones. The scribe sits in the shade of a tall fig tree, ink brush in hand, eyes half-lidded with boredom. His name is Hekanacht, and you've met him before. He has the soft hands and passive arrogance of someone who's never bled from lifting things heavier than a stylus. Try not to spill, he mutters without looking up as you approach with your first sack. You don't respond. Just unload the grain and turn for the next. This repeats. Over and over. Haul, drop, step away. Haul, drop, step away. It's not the most physically brutal job, but it's draining in its own dull way. The sacks rub against your collarbone. The air smells of sour wheat. A nearby pile of chaff buzzes with flies. Still, there's something comforting about the rhythm. It's work, but it's stable work. Predictable. No falling rocks, no stray chisels. Just grain. You could almost convince yourself this is a better life. Almost. Later in the morning, you're sent to sweep out one of the side storage huts. You grab a palm broom and begin long, slow strokes across the packed earth floor. Dust rises in lazy spirals. You cover your mouth with the edge of your tunic. As you sweep, you hear two temple staff talking nearby. Their voices carry through the open window. He's requesting more rations for the workers again. Why? They're fine. They always survive on less. Barely. They passed out 3 last week. 3 out of 200? That's a rounding error. The conversation fades. You sweep a little harder. Not out of anger, just to feel like you're doing something. Back outside, the scribe calls out your name. You turn. He's waving something, one of his tablets. Hold this. You take it. It's heavier than expected, made of thick wood with a surface of packed wax. He uses a bronze stylus to scratch symbols into the soft layer. You glance at it while he writes. You don't understand the words, but you do notice the math. Columns. Symbols. Totals. How much grain came in? How much went out? How much is owed to the temple? How much disappears into miscellaneous losses? Interesting how miscellaneous always seems to match the amount missing from your rations. The scribe takes the tablet back without a word. You go back to work. Later, during your break, you find a quiet spot near the outer wall of the granary and sit with your back against the stone. It's warm, but not burning. A soft wind kicks up a bit of dust. You close your eyes and lean your head back. Nefreti passes by, carrying a small sealed jug. Granary duty? She asks. Yeah, better than the kiln, she says. Someone passed out yesterday. Smelled like smoked goat all morning. You chuckle, weakly. She sits next to you for a minute. Doesn't say much. Just shares a date from her pouch. You bite into it. Sweet, sticky, familiar. You ever wonder if they even notice we're still alive? She asks. Not unless we stop moving, you say. She nods. That's what I thought. You sit in silence for a while, watching a bird hop along the roof edge above. A little hoopoe, crest half raised, beak darting at flies. Even the birds work here. When your rest is up, you head back in. More sacks, more sweeping. You spend the afternoon sorting broken pots for refiring. It's fiddly work checking for cracks, separating reusable shards from total losses. You're surprisingly good at it. Your hands know the difference. Your eyes are sharp in that way. It's the small skills that get you through. The unnoticed ones. A fellow worker, Petu, leans over at one point. I think this one used to hold oil, he says, sniffing the edge of a cracked amphora. Smells like donkey sweat, you reply. Soil, he says with a grin. That gets a laugh. As the sun begins its descent, you're released early. A rare thing. Apparently, The head priest is doing inventory tomorrow, and the courtyard needs to be emptied. You're not going to argue with that. You walk home slower than usual. Not because you're more tired, but because you're not as rushed. Along the way, you pass the market path. It's closing up for the day, but there's still a little activity. A boy is selling roasted locusts from a clay dish. A woman is bartering for leeks. You catch a glimpse of dyed cloth and fresh bread. It's a flood of color and scent. After the pale, dusty world of grain silos and pot shards, you stop at the edge of it. Just for a moment. Just to feel normal. Like you're part of something, beyond hauling and stacking. Then, without a word, you turn away and head home. Because the sun is almost gone, and your body is heavier than your thoughts. And the only real survival skill you have left is getting enough sleep to do this again tomorrow. Evening again. The sky's dimming fast, now purple, fading to indigo, and the stars are starting to make their quiet appearances, one by one. You pass through the village gate, still marked with the same chipped glyphs as the day before. No one knows what they mean anymore. Maybe settlement. Maybe don't steal the goats. Maybe nothing. You're tired. But it's a manageable kind of tired. The kind you can fold neatly into yourself and carry until morning. Your hands are scraped, but not bleeding. Your back hurts, but not in a new way. These are all good signs. In this life, pain is a barometer of stability. Tonight, there's a faint smell of stew drifting through the air. You follow it like a moth. The main fire pit is bubbling with a communal pot, a mix of lentils, onion, garlic, if someone's been lucky. You get a scoop, offered by a boy with sharp elbows and a bored expression. You thank him anyway. You eat on your mat, back at your hut, watching the stars appear. There's a kind of peace to this part of the day. The work is over. The supervisors are gone. The only expectations now are sleep and maybe a dream that isn't about brick dust. But tonight, there's a guest in the village. Word spreads quickly. A wandering priest. Not one of the grand, temple-sweeping, goose-feather-fanning types. This one's older. Dusty. Probably halfway feral. The kind who carries stories instead of scrolls and sleeps where he stops walking. He's set up on a mat near the fire and begun talking. Not loud. Just enough for the curious to gather. And you? You're curious. You join the crowd. Not close, just close enough to hear. The priest is talking about Mott. You've heard the word your whole life, Mott. Order. Balance. Harmony. The thing the priests claim you uphold every time you move a brick or swat a fly. Supposedly, your sweat keeps the world aligned. But this priest? He has a different take. He describes Mott not just as balance between humans and gods, but as balance between people, between workers and kings, between the powerful and the forgotten. People glance at each other when he says that. He goes on, talking about how even a slave's breath counts in the grand design. That every load carried, every floor swept, every moment survived is part of maintaining the sacred shape of the world. Someone scoffs. Easy for him to say. He's not hauling limestone. The priest just smiles. I once hauled scrolls. Hundreds of them. Heavy with words. No one understood. I was as much a beast of burden as you are. Still am. Some days. You're not sure if he's telling the truth or just knows how to talk to tired people. Still, you listen. He tells a story probably made up about a woman in another village who worked as a grinder of grain. Every day, she sang to the stones. One day, a god passed by, heard her song, and disguised himself as a man to listen. When she died, he carved her name into the stars. You're skeptical, but you still look up. Later, as the fire dies down, the priest passes around a bowl of herb ash and oil blessing, or just tradition. Who knows, and people smear a dot on their foreheads. You don't. But you watch. There's something comforting about the ritual, even if you don't believe the premise. You slip away quietly after that. Back in your hut, you sit on your mat and stretch your legs. You press gently on your knee until it cracks. Relief. You drink a little water, chew a date, and lie down. Your mind wanders. Not to the work not tonight, but to the words the priest said. Balance. It's a funny thing to talk about when you live in a world so out of proportion, where gods get pyramids and you get a sunburn, where kings get chariots and you get sandals with more hole than soul. Still, there's something in the idea that maybe your survival, your small daily persistence, holds the sky up in its own quiet way. You think about that as your eyes begin to close. And then, somewhere far off, you remember something. The crocodile dung. Yeah, that stuff. One of your first jobs was cleaning the temple steps with a mixture of crushed limestone and crocodile dung. Supposed to purify the stone, they said. Drive out evil spirits. Or tourists. Or whatever the Bronze Age equivalent was. You scrubbed those steps so hard your hands bled. And the smell? Ungodly. But it worked. The steps stayed clean. The priests never noticed you. Which was the goal. Survival means not being noticed. Not too much, anyway. You drift off thinking about that. Crocodile dung and cosmic balance. Your dreams are strange tonight. You're flying over the Nile, looking down at the tiny dots of workers below. You see yourself. From above, you look like just another blur. But you're moving. Still carrying. Still breathing. Maybe that's enough. You wake up coughing. It's still dark. Not that deep velvet kind of night. But the pale gray, just before the horizon, starts to think about changing color. The air in your hut feels thick, like someone stirred up all the dust in your lungs while you were sleeping. You sit up slowly. Your breath rasps a little. Your throat feels scratchy. You cough again once. Twice and rub your chest, like that's going to do anything. You think, maybe it's just the air, maybe it's nothing. But there's a quiet throb behind your eyes, and your joints feel swollen, as if they've got their own opinions about today. Outside, a rooster makes a half-hearted attempt at being inspiring. It sounds as tired as you feel. You manage to get to your feet, splash some water on your face, and drink from the jug in the corner. The water is slightly stale, but cold. It soothes your throat for now. There's a momenta, very real one, where you consider not going. Just one day. Just to rest. But then your brain reminds you, missing work isn't really an option. There's no sick leave, no take-it-easy clause. If you're not bleeding or unconscious, you're expected to show up. And even if you are bleeding, someone's still likely to throw you a tool and say, just go slower. So, you dress. Slowly. With more sighs than motion. Every part of your body protests like it's forming a union. Outside, the sky begins to lighten. You grab your satchel and make your way to the work assembly, coughing softly into your hand. You're not alone. As you arrive at the site today, it's the irrigation ditch. Lucky you notice others are sick too. Subtle signs, red eyes, pale faces. That hollow kind of movement where people look like they're walking underwater. Seasonal fever? Maybe from the marsh. Maybe from that goat that wandered too close to the water jugs last week. You overhear someone say, "It's the swamp cough again. Took 3 in Menfei last month." Someone else shrugs. Let the gods sort it. You try not to think about it. You press on. The work today is slow and wet. You're lining irrigation channels with packed mud, smoothing the edges with bare hands and battered wooden paddles. The mud is cold, numb fingers, kind of cold, but the sun is already rising, so you know that won't last long. You're elbow deep when the chills hit. You don't shiver. You buzz. Your body vibrates like someone lit a small fire inside your bones and then blew it out halfway. You slow your pace, breathing through your mouth now. A woman next to you, not Nefreti, but one of the older workers, named Aset, glances at you sideways. You look worse than usual, she says. Thanks, you mumble, barely able to manage a half smile. She hands you a dried herb bundle. Chew it. What is it? Something bitter, she says. And something worse. You don't argue. You chew. It tastes like moldy parchment dipped in river water. But you chew it anyway. Aset shrugs. My grandmother used to boil that stuff for everything. She lived to be 70. You raise an eyebrow. That's not comforting. She also had a third toe that pointed sideways, she adds. Take what you will. You keep chewing. The rest of the day blurs. You work slower. You get scolded once by the overseer, not yelled at, just the thin-lipped, we see you kind of look. You keep moving. Keep scooping. Keep smoothing. At one point, you slip on the embankment and land knee first in the canal. You hear a splash, feel the cold jolt, and then nothing. Just the same motion. Up, down, pack, smooth. Someone offers you a fig later. You try to smile, but it doesn't quite stick. By midday, your cough has worsened. It's deeper now, like something is crawling up your throat just to complain. Your back aches. Your arms tremble when you stop working, so you just don't stop. During break, you sit in the shade of a crumbling brick wall. Nefreti finds you there and immediately frowns. You look like death, she says, with a matter-of-factness that somehow isn't unkind. Feels about right. She squats next to you, takes your wrist, and presses her fingers against your skin like she's checking your pulse. Maybe she is. You're too tired to ask. You're hot, she says, flattered. She rolls her eyes. Not that kind of hot. She rummages through her pouch and pulls out another bundle of herbs different from Aset's. This one smells like mint. And garlic had a child and left it in the sun. Brew this tonight, she says. Or at least steep it in hot water. If you're not better by tomorrow. She doesn't finish that sentence. She doesn't need to. You've seen what happens when the fevers linger. There's no real healer in your village, just people with enough memory to know which roots to boil. Sometimes they help. Sometimes they don't. You think back to a boy from 2 seasons ago. Got a cough like this. Stayed in bed one day. Then 2. Then never got up again. They said his spirit got too light and floated off. You're not sure if that's a metaphor or if they really believe that. Either way, you remember the quiet when his hut went empty. You shake the image from your mind. Back to the ditch. Back to the mud. By late afternoon, your fever spikes hard. You don't fall, exactly, but you do stop moving long enough that someone notices. The overseer frowns, mutters something about useless bodies, and waves you off for the day. You don't argue. You walk home in a fog. Your hut feels different when you arrive. Smaller, darker. The walls lean a little. Or maybe you do. You sit on the mat and stay there for a long while. Eventually, you light a small fire and boil water. You add Nefreti's herbs. The smell is awful, but promising. You drink it slowly, wincing at every swallow. Your stomach protests, but your throat is soothed. You lean back, breathe. And wait, you think of all the others past and present who've sat where you are now. Quiet, sick, wondering if this is the time your body finally taps out. Historians still argue whether laborers like you had access to formal healing, or if temple physicians only treated the elite. From where you're lying, the answer seems obvious. But maybe not hopeless, because you're still here, still breathing, still surviving. For now, when morning comes, you feel not good, but not worse, which, in this life, is its own kind of miracle. You open your eyes to pale light seeping in through the window hole. Your mouth is dry as salt rock. Your head still aches like someone's knocking from the inside. But the fever blessedly has broken. You're drenched in sweat. Your tunic clings to your skin like a second, less cooperative epidermis, but you're breathing easier. You lie there for a while, just listening. Outside, someone's sweeping the path with a reed broom. The scratch-scratch rhythm is weirdly comforting. Nearby, a goat bleats. A cart creaks by. Life goes on no matter how close you came to skipping it. You sit up slowly. Your joints ache, but they're moving. You blink a few times and stretch, feeling every inch of your spine complain. But you're up. You made it. Not dead yet. And that's victory. You make yourself drink a full cup of water, even though your stomach flips like a fish in a hot pan. Then, you chew on a handful of dried lentils left from 2 days ago. It's not breakfast, but it's something. No one calls your name this morning. Maybe the overseer heard you were sick. Maybe he's giving you a 1-day grace period. Or maybe he forgot you exist. Honestly, any of those would track. So you do something rare. You rest. Not all day. Not completely, but just enough. You sit outside your hut, knees drawn up, arms loose, and you watch the world instead of hauling it. The breeze is cool for once. The palm trees sway in that lazy, we're ornamental kind of way. The sun peeks over the temple roofs, golden and blinding. You see people move past. Some look like you, some don't. There are the linen-draped merchants, sandals tied high, jewelry jangling even when they're standing still. Then the scribes, walking like they're allergic to sand, scrolls tucked neatly under their arms, and then your people. The brick haulers, the grain grinders, the invisible gears in this machine of stone and gods. You know them by how they walk, low to the ground, one foot already bracing for the next step, shoulders permanently tilted like they're still carrying yesterday's weight. A little girl skips past you, dragging a string behind her with a clay beetle tied to the end. She smiles as she passes, like this is just a normal day. And for her, maybe it is. You nod at her. Later, Nefredi finds you. She raises an eyebrow. Still upright, I see. Barely, you say. Your soup saved me. Don't give me too much credit. That soup would scare the gods. You smile, but it's a tired one. She sits beside you, crosses her legs, and picks at a reed mat she's mending. You're not the only one down this week, she says. P2's gone hoarse. Asset's been walking like her knees turned to clay. You nod. It's the season. Every season's got something, she mutters. You sit in silence for a while. She works the reed, and you watch the sun move slowly across the courtyard. Then she says softly, "You ever think about how strange it is? What we call life?" You blink. Define strange. I mean, this. She gestures vaguely. We haul bricks, get sick, hope for soup, and call it living. You glance up at the sky. It is, though. Living. What else would it be? She shrugs. Existing, maybe. You think about that. You think about yesterday's fever. About the bone-deep ache of wondering whether you'll wake up again. about the stories the old priest told of cosmic balance and being a spoke in the wheel of the divine. Maybe life is both things, existing and living, brick hauling and soup drinking, dirt-covered knees and one sweet breath in the morning air. The hours pass slowly. At midday, you wander over to the well and help refill some of the village jugs. Light work. No one asks you to do it, but the motion feels good, almost normal. You tie a cloth around your face to keep out the dust. Your hands feel steadier now. The village healer, if you can call her that, stops by your hut just before sundown. She's older than most bricks and twice as sharp. She smells like thyme and sweat. She pokes at your forehead, taps your chest, and grunts. "You lived," she says. "Thanks for the diagnosis." She ignores you and digs through her pouch, pulls out a small bundle. "Make tea with this." No arguments. "What is it?" She squints at you. "What saved your cousin might save you too." You take it without protest. You're not stupid. As she turns to leave, she adds over her shoulder, "Next time you feel fever coming, don't wait. Boil the water. Drink. Rest. Don't try to carry the world on your shoulders. You're not that important." You nod, humbled and slightly amused, because the truth is she's right. You're not that important. And yet somehow, you're everything to this quiet, creaking system. The empire runs on people like you, on the ones who show up, who sweat, who carry, who don't collapse unless they absolutely have to. That night you drink the tea. It tastes like boiled grass and regret, but it warms your chest. You sit outside under the stars, your mat pulled beside the wall, and let the wind cool your still warm skin. You think of all the things that tried to kill you this week. Falling carts, rotten grain, fever, boredom. But here you are, still breathing, still sore, still stubbornly surviving. Maybe that's enough. There's a strange stillness in the village this morning. It's not quiet. There's always some kid hollering about a missing sandal or a goat trying to chew someone's laundry, but there's a kind of hush under all the noise, like the world is holding its breath. You don't notice it at first. You wake up normally. If normal means peeling yourself off a sweat-damp mat, stretching every muscle with the stiffness of a statue, and hoping today doesn't involve lifting anything heavier than your own legs, you feel better. Not great, but enough that you can blink without seeing stars. Your throat no longer feels like it's been sandpapered, and your fever has faded to a dull background warmth. You eat a bit of flatbread, drink some water, and start your walk toward the center of the village just in time to hear the music. It's faint at first. Flute notes, thin and wavering like wind in reeds. Then a drum soft, slow. Boom. Boom. Pause. It's not festive. Not temple festival loud. It's something quieter. More reverent. Someone leans out of their doorway and says, "Procession." You raise your eyebrows. Processions aren't exactly everyday occurrences around here. They happen maybe once a season, usually for one of the big gods. Amun, Ra, Hathor. If the local cattle have been particularly fruitful. And when it happens, it's BP, a break in the monotony. You still have to work, but if the procession passes by your sight, you get to stop, watch, maybe even smile. You follow the sound toward the main path. You're not alone. Half the village seems to be doing the same. People shuffle quietly, wide-eyed, as if something rare is about to happen, which, to be fair, it is. And then you see them, priests. Not the dusty, traveling kind. Not the temple assistants with their half-washed linen and sunburned shins. These are the real ones. Gold collars, fresh robes, eyes rimmed with black coal. They look like they were sculpted, not born. They lead a group of musicians, flute players, harpists, and those tall drums that thump like heartbeat thunder. Behind them, carried on a decorated platform, is a golden statue of the god Horus. Eyes wide, beak-like face glinting in the sunlight. His feet don't touch the ground, of course. He's carried by 6 very sweaty-looking acolytes who are trying not to drop anything. You join the crowd lining the path, standing just close enough to see without getting scolded by temple guards. It's beautiful, ornate, mesmerizing, but it also feels strange. Because as you stand there mud-stained, barefoot, and half-healed, you realize something. They don't see you. Not really. Their eyes sweep over the crowd, but they don't see you. To them, you're background. A clump of human noise. Someone who probably smells like old onions and cracked leather. You're not offended. You're not even surprised. You just notice. You watch the statue pass by, sunlight catching the gold so brightly it makes your eyes water. People bow. Some whisper prayers. A few toss flower petals. Where they got them, you don't know. Someone beside you mutters, "Maybe this will mean more food in the granaries." Someone else whispers, "Maybe the taxes won't go up." Someone behind you snorts, "Maybe pigs will learn to sing." You stifle a laugh. When the procession turns the corner toward the temple stairs, people begin to disperse. The magic lifts. The workday resumes. You walk with Nefredi back toward the site. She glances sideways. "You ever feel like we're just decorations?" You nod. "Only every day." She smiles. "You know what I noticed? That statue? The god on the platform? His feet aren't even touching anything. Divine privilege. You say, I bet he's never hauled bricks, or dealt with a blister the size of a pigeon egg." She laughs. "Exactly. You reached the site today. It's an open plaza by the temple wall. You've been assigned to help prepare the area for repainting. This means scrubbing off old pigment, hauling water, and trying not to get accused of defacing sacred things. It's tedious, delicate, and weirdly political. You're working near a partially faded mural, something about Pharaoh smiting his enemies with one arm while holding a bouquet in the other. Classic Pharaoh stuff. You're given a reed brush and a bucket of water, and told, "Gently," so you scrub. Gently. And as you work, you notice things. Little figures in the corner of the mural, workers, maybe. Slaves. They're depicted carrying baskets, but they have no faces. Just outlines, like they were added last, or not finished. You lean in. There's something strangely familiar about the way they're drawn. Bent backs, forward lean, hands clutched tight around baskets full of whatever Pharaoh needed that day. You look at your own hands, your own shoulders, and for a second, you see yourself there, drawn into a corner, outlined but not named, part of the story but not remembered. You keep scrubbing. Later, during break, someone passes around a small bowl of pickled radishes. You don't ask why, you just eat. Salty, sharp, refreshing. A weird little gift in the middle of sunburn and fading paint. A scribe walks by with a scroll tucked under one arm. He doesn't acknowledge anyone. He just hums something tuneless and mutters about calendars and lunar adjustments. Nefredi watches him go. He probably has a name that's carved into a wall somewhere. You nod. Mine's carved into the bottom of a broken sandal. She chuckles. Better than nothing, is it? Sometimes. Later that afternoon, a group of kids wander by. They're too young to work, not quite old enough to fear the system. One of them pretends to be a pharaoh, waving a stick like a staff. The others bow dramatically. You watch them for a moment, and you think, maybe this is what survival really is. It's not glory. It's not being carved into murals. It's not golden statues, or flutes, or feathered collars. It's knowing who you are, knowing what you do, and still finding reasons to laugh, to eat a radish, to watch kids pretend the world can be anything. It's knowing your feet will never leave the ground, but walking anyway. By the time the sun dips low and the shadows stretch across the courtyard like lazy cats, the workday is winding down. The pigment team starts packing up brushes and half-full water jars. You clean your hands in a bucket that's more mud than water now. Then wipe them on the back of your tunic, because that's what the back is for. Your arms ache, but it's a softer ache today. The kind you can carry without thinking about it. Your head is clearer. The sickness is behind you now mostly. A faint reminder still hums in your chest, but it's like background music, easy to ignore. You walk home slowly, savoring the cool of early evening. Someone ahead of you is singing, off-key and too loud. But you don't mind. It's a song about riverboats and spilled wine every line, slightly inappropriate and deeply familiar. Back at the village, a few people are gathered around an old man sitting cross-legged on a mat, his knees jutting out like old tree roots. He's reading from something reciting. No scroll in sight, just memory. His voice is gravelly, but steady. You pause to listen, and the jackal-headed god weighed the heart. He says, "And the feather of truth did not bend." So the man passed, and was led into the field of reeds, where there was no hunger, no work, and the sandals never wore out. Someone in the crowd lets out a soft, the way people do when they want to believe something but aren't quite ready to. You sit near the back, your legs crossed, hands resting on your knees. The old man continues. But when the heart was heavier then, Amit came, with her crocodile jaws and lion's paws, and the heart was devoured, and the soul ceased to be. The kids in the group shiver theatrically, one of them mimes being eaten, to much laughter. You smile. It's a story you've heard a dozen times, maybe more, but it hits different tonight. Because today, you were reminded. You'll need to pass that test too, someday. Everyone does. You remember the Book of the Dead, not that you've ever seen a real copy. But bits and pieces float around, like ash from someone else's fire. Spells to recite, things to say to the gods, instructions for the journey after death. You once heard a scribe say that without the right spells, even a noble could get lost in the afterlife, stuck wandering in darkness with no name and no mouth to speak. Terrifying. And you? You don't even have a copy of the book. Most workers don't. They're expensive, custom-written, and full of gods you've never personally met. You'd have to save 10 lifetimes of wages to afford one, and even then, you'd probably spell your own name wrong on the cover. Historians still argue whether poor Egyptians had access to the full funerary texts or just abbreviated versions. Some say everyone got at least a basic burial prayer. Others believe the underclass were left to improvise. You suspect the truth is somewhere in the middle. A few kind words, a scrap of linen, and maybe someone whispering your name after you're gone. You think about your own heart, whether it's light enough to pass the test. You've lied before, swiped an extra date once or twice, thought bad thoughts about the overseer. That alone might tip the scales. But you've also shared food, helped neighbors, stayed quiet when someone needed covering. You hope it balances out. The old man finishes his tale. The listeners clap softly. A few drop dried beans into a bowl near his feet, a thank you offering. He nods, pleased. As the group disperses, you stay seated a little longer, watching the stars come out. The field of reeds. A paradise, they say. Endless grain. No labor. Cool breezes. You'd never have to bend over a basket of bricks again. It sounds too good to be true. But maybe that's the point. You wander home as night finally claims the sky. The air is calm, almost gentle. The fires in the village are burning low. Someone plays a soft melody on a reed pipe near the granary, and the notes float lazily over the rooftops. Back in your hut, you light a small oil lamp and sit beside it, watching the flame flicker. It dances like a tiny spirit, bright and wild. You dig into your pouch and pull out a little piece of pottery, just a broken shard from the worksite. It's nothing special. A bit of faded paint on one side. A smooth edge, where it's snapped. But you scratch a few marks onto it. Not words, not symbols. Just something. Something yours. You don't know why you do it. Maybe to be remembered. Maybe just to leave a mark. Then you set it beside your mat, lean back, and let your body begin the slow descent into sleep. As your eyes close, you whisper not loudly, not formally, just enough that someone, somewhere, might hear. I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not stopped helping. You don't know if it's the right spell, but maybe, just maybe, it's enough. Night stretches long and quiet, and when dawn finally presses its pale fingers across your window hole again, you're already half awake. You're stiff, as always, but there's something different in the air today. You feel it. As you sit up, something crisp, fresh. A rare breeze, teasing the edge of your hut, and with it, a smell. Silt and jasmine. The kind of scent that only comes when the Nile is about to swell. Flood season is coming. You dress more quickly than usual. Not out of excitement, no one gets excited about a 1,000-year-old river messing with their front yard. But because flood season changes everything. Suddenly, your survival isn't just about bricks and fevers and overseers. It's about water. Timing. Getting the grain moved before it spoils, the tools packed before they vanish in the mud. You grab your satchel and head outside. The village is already buzzing. Someone's yelling about tying up goats. A woman's pulling children away from the water line, shouting their names like spells. The old man who told the horror story last night is scooping his fire pit into a clay bowl and muttering about not losing another good cooking stone. At the edge of the village, the Nile glistens like a sleeping beast. Calm now, but poised. Everyone knows what's coming. You're assigned to the grain reserve today, your favorite. Not because it's easier. It's not. But because it's dry. Or it was. By the time you arrive, there's already a thin sheet of water snaking across the path between the silos. You roll your eyes and step over it, sandals squelching. The task is clear. Move the sealed sacks to the raised storehouse. Simple. Until you remember that each one weighs about as much as an adolescent donkey and is sealed with string that was clearly tied by someone who hated your fingers personally. You team up with Didu, who looks just as thrilled as you. We're preserving the kingdom's prosperity, he says, grunting as he lifts the first sack. Feels like I'm preserving a collapsed lung, you reply. The two of you haul it together, sack by sack, up a creaky ramp into the elevated storage hut. It smells like old wheat, wet rope, and ambition. Outside, the water rises slowly. A few frogs have already claimed one of the sunken cart tracks as their new empire. They sing about it constantly. You work through the morning, sweat and curses and the occasional collapsed laugh. At one point, a whole sack bursts mid-lift. Grain goes everywhere. Didu drops his end and stares at the mess like it personally betrayed him. You sweep, he says. You dropped it. You made me laugh. You both laugh again. Tired. Slightly hysterical. You sweep. During your short break, you sit on a barrel and watch the water creep across the path like a thief. You remember last year's flood, how It washed out part of the north wall, and someone's entire cook fire vanished overnight. They were so mad they swore at the river for a week straight. You sip some water from your cup and chew on a lump of dried fig. It's not great. It's also your entire lunch. You think the gods do this on purpose? Dedu asks, gesturing at the flood. I think the river does what it wants, and the gods take credit. Sounds about right. There's a moment of silence. Then Dedu asks, you ever think we'll leave here? You frown. Where would we go? He shrugs. North, south, across the desert, anywhere. You look at him for a moment. No, you say. But I think about what it would feel like. Like walking without bricks. He nods. That'd be nice. The flood continues its slow invasion. You go back to work. That afternoon, the temple guards come down to check on the silos. Not to help, just to supervise. Make sure the royal grain is protected, even though none of them could lift a sack if their lives depended on it. You and Dedu bow. They barely nod. The guard captain asks you a question formal, stilted, the kind that sounds like it came off a scroll. How many sacks remain unrelocated? You glance at Dedu, then say, 33, if the last count held. The captain scribbles something on a wax tablet and walks away without a word. As he leaves, Dedu whispers, Bet? He puts down 35 and keeps 2. You snort. And those 2 will be the first to spoil. By sunset, the water is ankle deep along the lower path. You're exhausted. You've lifted more grain than any person should. Your shoulders burn. Your palms are raw. But the job's almost done. You look at the remaining stack, now down to single digits. You both carry the last sack together. One end each, one breath at a time. When you set it down, Dedu leans back against the wall and sighs like he just dropped a pyramid. You laugh. A real one this time. Because for once, you're done. Back at the village, people are settling in. Someone's roasting river reeds. Someone else is playing a flute near the flood line. Kids splash in the shallows until a mother yells about leeches. You sit on your mat, watching the sun bleed orange across the surface of the water. Everything glows. Even the huts look golden for a few minutes. Then the light fades, and the frogs start again. You smile. Just a little. Tomorrow, the water will rise more. The work will shift again. Sandbags, planks, and frantic shoveling. You'll probably wake up to wet feet, but that's tomorrow. Tonight, you rest. You survived another flood day. And if the gods are watching good, let them. You wake to the smell of wet earth and the sound of distant shouting, not the panicked kind, more the, well, this again kind. That universal tone reserved for minor crises and goats in places they shouldn't be. Your feet are damp. Called it. You sit up and feel your mat squish ever so slightly beneath you. The floodwaters must have risen overnight, just enough to seep through the foundation cracks. You mutter something unflattering about the Nile and roll your mat up onto a wooden crate to dry. The hut's walls hold for now, but they groan with dampness. Outside, the village looks like it floated halfway into the river. Puddles ripple under every footstep, and someone's chicken is wading past your doorway like it owns the place. You squint at it. It squints back. You pull on your wet sandals, because they're always wet, no end. Step out into the marshy world. Today is sandbag duty. You're not surprised. You heard it murmured last night over reed soup and sour beer. Everyone knew the southern wall would need reinforcing. The foreman even tried to look serious when he announced it, like he'd just come down from the gods with a commandment instead of from the temple stairs with a list. You arrive at the site and see a long line of burlap sacks, a pile of gravel, and 2 very unimpressed donkeys tied to a cart of river clay. Nefreti is already there, waist deep in logistics, snapping orders at the younger kids. 3 scoops per bag, she says. Tied twice, not once. If they burst, you get to explain it. You fall into step beside her. She hands you a bag. Welcome to drowning prevention. Is there a title for this job? Bagmaster. River whisperer. Mud management specialist. You nod solemnly. I'll put that on my tomb. You scoop gravel into the sack, tug the rope around it, and drag it into place. It's work, sure, but it's better than brick hauling. At least it changes. You build something. A wall, a barrier. Something that might hold. The water laps at your ankles. It's not rising fast, but it's steady. The Nile doesn't sprint, it strolls. It ambles in like a bored relative and settles into everything, whether you invited it or not. By mid-morning, the wall is halfway done. A low berm of sandbags stretches across the south edge of the village. Kids are patting it down with sticks like it's made of cake. Adults move slower, shovel, carry, lift, sweat. Didu shows up late, holding 2 loaves of flatbread like peace offerings. They were stuck in the oven, he says by way of explanation. You were stuck in the oven, someone replies. You eat during the brief break. The bread is warm, somehow still soft. You tear off a piece and hand it to a passing boy who's clearly too small to be lifting what he's lifting. He nods thanks and keeps walking. No words, just a look. It's weird how much can be said in looks when your whole life is made of carrying things silently. Later, the overseer himself comes to inspect the wall. He's wearing his special tunic, the one with the extra folds that probably took a whole additional servant to pleat and walks like his feet have never been wet a day in his life. He pokes one sandbag with a reed stick, nods once and declares, "Acceptable." You blink. Acceptable? Nefredi whispers, "Do we get a feast? A shrine? A gold medal?" "No," you whisper back. "We get more acceptable work tomorrow." She rolls her eyes and flicks a pebble at your foot. The rest of the day is more of the same scooping, tying, stacking. But with each bag, the wall rises. Slowly, steadily, and when you step back and see the full stretch of it snaking across the edge of the village, you feel something unexpected. Pride. Not the carve my name in a temple kind, just satisfaction. The quiet kind. The kind that hums behind your ribs and says, "We built something, and it works, and we're still here." Historians still argue whether low-class Egyptians felt a sense of ownership over their public works, whether they saw themselves in the irrigation canals and flood walls, or just saw more back-breaking labor. But you know this much. When the Nile comes close, and your work holds, you feel it. In your spine, in your fingers. Because the river doesn't care about status. It doesn't read temple scrolls. It doesn't bow to gold. It rises. And you respond. You walk home that evening with mud up to your calves and rope burns on your palms. The sun is sinking behind a haze of clouds. And for once, there's no smoke from someone's dinner fire. Just steam rising off damp rooftops. Your neighbor, the old one who never speaks, gives you a nod as you pass. It's a solemn thing, small and significant. In your hut, you strip off your damp tunic and wring it out over the doorway threshold. It makes a wet slapping sound as water hits earth. You laugh, tiredly, at the sheer absurdity of being proud of that sound. You rinse your hands and feet, light your lamp, and sit on the crate where your mat's still drying. And for the first time in a while, you speak aloud. "Today was good," you say. It echoes just slightly. You say it again, quieter this time. "Today was good, because nothing collapsed. No one bled. You shared food. You built a wall. You were seen, however briefly. And when the Nile pushed, you pushed back. You don't know if the gods will remember that, but you will. The wall holds. For now. It's been 3 days since you built it, and the water hasn't breached. The sandbags sag in places like old bones, under damp linen, but they're still standing, just like you. The flood has started to pull back, slowly. The paths are muddy instead of submerged. The chickens have resumed their endless wandering. The children have resumed their endless yelling. The frogs, regretfully, have moved on. And you? You've been reassigned, again. Not to bricks, not to grain. Today, you're in the palm groves. It's a quiet job gathering fronds, trimming back dead leaves, collecting the sticky date clusters that cling like bees to the upper branches. Not glamorous, but something about it feels older than the rest, more patient. Like the trees are watching you, not judging, just noting. You work in pairs today, clipping and bundling, then hauling the long, feathered fronds back to the drying sheds. It's repetitive, but the breeze here is better. You can smell water and dust and faint sweetness from the dates. It almost feels peaceful. Almost. Your partner is a woman named Baked, maybe 20, with shoulders broader than yours and an attitude like sun-baked stone. She doesn't talk much, but she hums. Long, low notes that rise and fall like waves. You don't know the song, but it feels familiar anyway. You hum along. The overseer barely visits the groves. Too much walking. Too many mosquitoes. So for a few hours, you almost forget what you are. You're not a laborer. Not a name on a list. Not a pair of tired arms with a quota. You're just there. Part of the day. Part of the earth. By midday, you stop to eat under the biggest palm tree, its fronds rustling like old whispers. You chew on a roasted onion and share a piece of dried fish with Baket, who nods at you in that way that means, we don't need to talk about this. She finally speaks when the wind shifts. You think it's true? She asks, eyes on the horizon. About the field of reeds? You blink. That it exists? That there's peace there, that you don't have to work, that everything just grows. You think of the old priest's story, of the scales, of your heart. Featherlight, or not. I hope so, you say. She nods again. Me too. Later, while gathering fallen dates into a basket, you find something odd. A carving. Not grand. Not official. Just a little figure. Scratched into the base of a tree. It's worn down. Probably by wind and years and bored hands. But it's clear. A man. Arms outstretched. A cart behind him. A sun overhead. Someone like you. You touch it lightly. The lines are shallow, but still there. You wonder who made it. A worker like you? A scribe taking a break? Someone who wanted to leave a piece of themselves behind without waiting for the priest to care? You trace the figure once with your finger. Just once. Then you keep moving. That evening, you head home slow. No rush. No dread. The sun sinks behind the groves, casting long shadows across the path. You walk barefoot, sandals slung over your shoulder. The mud is cool between your toes, and the air smells of growing things. Back at your hut, you find your mat dry. Your water jug full, your old carved pottery shard still tucked in its corner. You sit down and exhale. Long and deep. And for the first time in weeks, your thoughts drift forward not just toward tomorrow, but beyond. You imagine yourself older, wrinkled, still barefoot, maybe still hauling something, but still breathing, still moving, maybe even teaching some kid how to haul the way that doesn't break your back. You imagine a grave, small, simple, maybe a few carved lines to say you were here. Not important, but present. And maybe, just maybe, someone will see it. Will pause. Will wonder, like you did with the tree. You lie back and let your eyes close. You survived. Not just another day, but this life, this stretch, this flood, this fever. You kept your name. Even if no one else remembers it, you do. And for now, that's enough. And now, as the stars stretch wide across the desert sky and the hush of the Nile returns, you can feel your breath soften. You've done what you needed to do. You've carried what had to be carried. And you've laid it all down. Here, in the quiet. The heat of the day is gone now. What's left is stillness. And that kind of stillness has power. Your hands can finally rest. Your shoulders sink gently into the mat beneath you. The ache is still there, but so is the proof that you lived through it. You might not have a tomb carved with your name. You might not have a statue gilded in your image. But you've built walls. You've held the line. You've sung when no one was listening. And that, too, is a legacy. So breathe. Just breathe. Let the wind outside brush past your doorway. Let the hush of the village wrap around your ribs like linen. Let the flickering lamp beside your mat grow dim. You are safe. You are finished. You are remembered, if only by yourself. And in this moment, with your eyes heavy and your heartbeat slow, you drift toward something weightless, toward that long field of reeds, where there is no labor, no overseer, only soft ground under your feet, cool wind on your cheek, and the sense at last that you've arrived. Sleep well, survivor of the Nile. Sleep well.